The Witches of Jirisan Baki, a Korean horror story. The sacrifice of the dark moon. Would you accept a blessing that could give you everything you ever wanted? Unlimited wealth, the love you desire, even the power to cheat death itself. If that blessing came with a price that might cost you everything? This is not a story about choices made lightly. This is a story about what happens after the choice is made. Part 1. The Body in the Forest. The year was 1980. In the province of South Jeolla, where the ancient Jirisan mountain range rises from the peninsula in great dark ridges covered with cedar and pine, there was a small river town called Haripung. Not large enough to appear on most maps, not small enough to be entirely forgotten. A town of farmers and merchants and a handful of professionals, settled into the folds of the mountain for generations, connected to the outside world by a single road that wound down through the forest to the valley highway below. On the night of the dark moon, when the lunar calendar shows no light at all and the sky above the mountains is absolute, a woodcutter named Jirisan had gone into the Jirisan forest before dawn to gather timber. He had made this walk hundreds of times. He knew the paths between the trees the way he knew the lines of his own hands. But that morning, something was different. The smell reached him first. Not fire, not rot, not anything he could name with certainty, but something wrong underneath the forest's ordinary smell. Something acrid and dark and burnt that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up before his mind had processed why. He moved toward it, thinking of fire, thinking of the forest burning, and became aware that something was moving behind him. He turned around multiple times, calling out into the pre-dawn dark, receiving no answer. Just the trees, just the path, just the impossible certainty that he was not alone. Then the black smoke appeared. It rose from nowhere and spread between the trees in slow, deliberate tendrils. And in its center, Jirisan saw a woman. A black hanbok, her hair covering her face entirely, her eyes visible through the strands, red, burning with a light that had nothing to do with the dark around them, fixed on him with a steadiness that was worse than aggression. He stepped toward her. She dissolved into the smoke. The smoke dissolved into the air. And where it had been, Jirisan found what she had been standing over. A body. Park Vishnu, one of Haripung's most prominent businessmen, owner of the local textile mill, a man whose face appeared in every town photograph going back 20 years, was lying on the forest floor. Or rather, parts of him were. The torso was gone. What remained, the head, the hands, the feet, had been arranged together and stitched, skin to skin, with thick, dark thread, as though someone had reassembled what they could. On the forehead, drawn or burned, impossible to tell which, was a circular symbol, a pattern of concentric lines that suggested something rotating, something being consumed. The thumb of his right hand was missing. Jirisan ran to the police station and told them everything. The officer assigned to the case was Detective Oh Jae-won, a methodical man who had spent 15 years in the province and considered himself thoroughly unimpressed by superstition. He documented the scene carefully. He asked the right questions. He did not allow himself to show, in the presence of the woodcutter or his colleagues, the particular disquiet he felt when he noted that this was the second such case in 2 months. The first had been a small shopkeeper named Kim Nae-ryong, found on the riverbank on the previous dark moon. Same configuration. Torso absent, remaining parts stitched together, same symbol on the forehead, same missing right thumb. 2 victims, 2 dark moons, the same signature. Jae-won interviewed everyone who had known Park Vishnu. He interviewed Kim Nae-ryong's family. He asked about enemies, about debts, about the kind of ordinary human motivations that lead to violence. What he found instead was something he had not expected. Both men had, in the months before their deaths, been seen with a bandage on their right hand. When asked, both had given vague answers about a minor injury, but both thumbs had been gone for weeks before their bodies were found in the forest. Part 2, The Cave in the Mountain. On the 3rd dark moon, Dr. Cho Ajay came home from the hospital to find his house dark. He and his wife Soo-yeon lived in a comfortable house on the edge of town, and in recent months their lives had been transformed by the arrival, after years of trying, of their son, a child they had wanted desperately and had nearly given up on. He called for Su-yan from the doorway. No answer. He moved through the dark house with a candle, the electricity having gone out, the flame barely holding against a draft he couldn't locate. He was turning to check the bedroom when he felt it, the absolute and certain knowledge of being watched by something he couldn't see. He swung the candle in every direction. Nothing. Then she was there, right in front of him, the woman from the stories he'd been hearing all week. Yusang's stories, the rumors spreading through Haripung like water through dry earth. Black hanbok, hair across her face, eyes burning red through the strands, fixed on him with that patience that was worse than anger. He dropped the candle. In the moment it took him to find the light switch, she was gone. From the bedroom, his son began to cry. Dr. Cho ran in. His son was sitting on the floor beside the bed, crying, looking in the direction where the woman had vanished. Cho reached down to pick him up and looked under the bed. Su-yan was underneath it. What remained of her? Detective Jae-won arrived within the hour. He sat with Dr. Cho in the kitchen while officers documented the bedroom and listened to the man describe what had led to this night. It took a long time. Cho kept stopping to collect himself, to breathe, to look at his son sleeping in the chair across the room. He told Jae-won about the cave. After years of failed medical interventions, a neighbor had told Su-yan about a place deep in the Jirisan forest, a cave where certain women performed rituals, ancient methods, the kind that predated hospitals and clinics and the entire framework of modern medicine. The neighbor had gone herself years ago for a different purpose and had gotten what she asked for. Cho and Su-yan had been skeptical. They had also been desperate, and desperation has its own logic. They had found the cave on their second attempt, guided by voices that seemed to come from between the trees. Women's voices, calling Su-yan's name in unison, leading them deeper into the mountain. A cave mouth appeared where Cho had not seen one before. A woman in a black hanbok had stood at the entrance and stopped him with one raised hand. Only Su-yan could enter. He had waited outside for what felt like hours. When Su-yan emerged, the thumb of her right hand was wrapped in cloth, bleeding through. He had asked what happened. She had not answered. Not then, not ever. In the months since, she had changed. Not dramatically, not in any way he could easily describe to a doctor or a colleague, but in small, accumulating ways that added up to a woman who was not entirely present in her own life. As though some essential part of her attention was always directed elsewhere. And then she became pregnant, and their son was born. And Jae-won was now sitting in their kitchen looking at the child and thinking about thumbs and dark moons and a symbol that kept appearing on the foreheads of the dead. They took her thumb, Cho said, and whatever they gave her in exchange, it owned her after that, and on the dark moon they collect what they're owed. Part 3. The detective goes into the forest. Jae-won did not believe in witches. He believed in evidence, in motive and opportunity and the physical reality of crime. He had spent 15 years constructing an understanding of human violence that required no supernatural explanation. But he also believed what he had seen in that bedroom, and what Jusang had described in the forest, and what the bodies, 3 now, always the same, were telling him in the language of evidence. He went to the forest that evening with his senior officer, Sergeant Park. They searched the section of Jirisan that Cho had described. The forest was dense, and the light was already failing, and as they moved deeper, the wind picked up, the same wind that Cho had described, that Jusang had described, that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Jae-won heard voices, women's voices calling his name, not shouting, calling, the gentle insistence of people who know you will come eventually and are patient about it. He stopped and looked around. 3 figures stood between the trees. Their skin was white, not pale, not bloodless, but white in the way that stone is white. Their eyes were entirely black. Their clothes were the simple white sokshima of the dead, and they moved toward him with the particular drifting motion of things that are not quite touching the ground. Kim Ne-ryong, Park Vishnu, Cho Su-yeon. Jae-won stared at them. Sergeant Park, standing 2 meters to his left, was looking at the forest with the expression of someone watching tree branches move, seeing nothing unusual, responding to nothing. The 3 figures stopped a few meters away from Jae-won and simply looked at him. Then they dissolved, not dramatically but quietly, simply ceasing to be there, as though they had made the point they came to make and had nothing further to add. Jae-won stood in the forest breathing carefully. He told Sergeant Park he needed to check something further in. He told him to go back and bring more officers, reliable ones, physical ones, people who could move through dense terrain quickly. Park went. The forest went dark. Not gradually, immediately, completely, as though the remaining light had been switched off rather than faded. And the voices came back, from a specific direction this time, drawing him forward along a path he was fairly certain had not been there when he arrived. The cave mouth appeared between two large granite outcroppings. He went in. The black smoke was immediate, rising from nothing, filling the space, and in it the woman in the black hanbok turned to face him with those burning red eyes and that absolute patience. He followed her deeper into the cave. When Sergeant Park returned with 4 officers, they found Jae-won in the forest. Not in the cave. In the open forest, on the ground, in the middle of the clearing where Jusang had found the first body 2 months earlier. The same configuration. The same stitching. The same symbol on his forehead. The thumb of his right hand was gone. Aftermath. After Jae-won's death, the provincial police sent investigators from Gwangju. They searched the forest for 3 days. They found no cave. They found no evidence of the women Cho had described. They found the site where the bodies had been discovered and collected samples and sent them to a laboratory in Seoul and received results that confirmed the deaths were real and the methods were beyond anything their forensic experience could explain. The case was listed as unsolved. The town of Haripung changed after that winter. People stopped going into the Jirisan forest after dark. Then they stopped going after noon. Then, by slow consensus, they stopped going at all. The forest paths that woodcutters and farmers had used for generations went unwalked, the undergrowth slowly reclaiming them, the trees closing the gaps. New families who moved to the area in later years were told simply that the forest was not safe. Landslides, unstable terrain, no clear trails. The real reason was not spoken aloud to strangers. On dark moon nights, the town's older residents still did what their grandparents had done. Kept all the lights burning, kept the doors shut, kept their children close. Some of them pressed their thumbs together in their laps, an old habit checking. Still there, still intact, still their own. Dr. Cho Aje raised his son alone. He left Haripung when the boy was 3 and settled in Busan, as far from Jirisan as he could get while remaining in the country. He worked as a physician for 30 more years. He never spoke publicly about what had happened. His son grew up knowing only that his mother had died young and that his father kept every lamp in the house burning on nights when there was no moon. He never asked why. He understood, in the way that children understand things they have absorbed rather than been told, that some questions are better not voiced. The cave has never been found by any official search, but it has been found by other people. Over the years, there have been others who went into the Jirisan forest on dark moon nights and found what they were looking for. Guidance and voices and a cave mouth between granite outcroppings and a woman in a black hanbok who stopped one person at the entrance and allowed another to continue inside. Some of them got what they came for. A child, a promotion, a reconciliation, a healing. The specific and particular thing that desperation had driven them into the mountain to seek. And on the next dark moon, or the one after that, or the one after that, the debt came due. The truth of what happened in Haripung was never officially established. But in the villages around Jirisan, on dark moon nights, the old people still lock their doors and keep their lights on. And if you find yourself in that forest, if you hear women's voices calling your name from between the trees, drawing you toward a cave you cannot find on any map, walk the other way. Whatever they are offering, it is not worth what they take in return.